All right, hi guys. Today's lesson is going to be about number patterns. We're going to begin with two basic rules with number patterns. The first one that we're going to talk about is, or the first one that you need to focus on when you're working with a number pattern is if the number pattern is increasing or decreasing. So first you want to look at the sequence of numbers and ask yourself, okay, are they getting bigger, which means they're increasing, or are they getting smaller, which means they're decreasing? If they're increasing, well then we have to ask ourselves, how are they increasing? Are they increasing by operations like multiplication and addition? Or if they're decreasing, are they decreasing by division or subtraction? And so once we figure that part out, then we're going to ask ourselves, how are those numbers changing from one number to the next? So how are we getting from one number to the next in each step of the pattern? So these two rules will help us get through any number pattern. So we're going to use these two questions to get us started. So here's our number pattern that we have that we're going to start off working with first. We have 2, 6, 18, and then we have our missing number, and then we have 162. So again, we're going back to our first question. Is the number pattern increasing or is it decreasing? So since I see these numbers getting bigger, then I know that I have to be either adding something to all these numbers or multiplying something with all these numbers. So those are the two we're going to focus in on then. So now we're going to go with question number 2. How are the numbers changing from one to the next? And so now I have to do a little bit of some mathematical work to help me out with this. Okay, so here's our pattern here. 2, 6, 18. Here's our missing number, and our 162. So the first thing is, when I have from 2 to 6, I know I can do 2 times 3 equals 6, or 2 plus 4 equals 6. Okay, so now I'm moving on to my next set of two numbers. I can do 6 times 3 equals 18, but I also know that 6 plus 12 equals 18. So right now what I see is that we have two sets of times 3's, so that could be my rule for the pattern, but I also have plus 4 and plus 12. Right now I don't see any kind of relationship here between these two. So I'm going to start off with the times 3 and see if that theory, we're going to test that theory here with the next set of numbers to see if it works out. Okay, so now we're going to do 18 times 3. We're going to test the times 3 theory and see if it works out. 18 times 3. So now I have to do a little bit of some mathematical work like I was talking about. I could either solve this in my head, because I know I could think of this as 10 times 3 and then add the 8 times 3 in my head. Or I can do the regular algorithm and do 8 times 3 is 24, carry my 2, and do 3 times 1 plus 2 more. Okay, so 8 times 3 is 24. We're going to carry my 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 more equals 5. So right now I'm thinking this number could be 54. And if it's 54, then I should be able to times it by 3 and get 162. So let's test it and see. 54. Here, let me go back here and write 54 in here, just to see if it works. 54 times 3 equals 162. Let's test it. 54 times 3. Okay, I can do 50 times 3 and then add that to 4 times 3 if I'm doing that mentally, or I could do the algorithm if I need to write it down. 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to write down my 2, carry my set of 10 over here in my tens place value column. 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 1 more is 16. All right, there's my 162, and that's what I have right here. So that means, yep, times 3 must be my rule for how these numbers are getting larger and how they're growing. Okay, so I completed the rest of my pattern using the times 3 rule for that. Okay, now what we're going to do, oops, sorry about that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to still use these same two questions to help guide us through finding some more numbers missing numbers in a pattern. Okay, we're going to do one more together, and then we're going to see how well you do on your own. Okay, so right now I have 88, 94, 106, or I'm sorry, 100, 106, and then I have 3 more missing numbers I have to figure out what's going on with them. So, is my pattern increasing or decreasing? I'm going back to question number 1. Since these numbers are getting bigger, they are increasing, so then I know that since they're increasing, I have to be thinking for this problem either addition or multiplication. Okay, so let's start off and let's see how they're growing with adding on this problem. 88 to 94. How do I get from 88 to 94? 88 plus what gives me 94? Well, I know 88 plus 6 is going to give me 94. 94. If I add 6, am I going to get 100? Yep, I sure am. If I have 100 and I add 6, am I going to get 106? Yep, I sure am. So I think I have my rule established, so let's carry it out through the rest of the problem. 100 plus 6, or I'm sorry, 106 plus 6, I should get what? 112. If you said 112, you're right. 112 plus 6. If you said 118, you're correct. All right, let's keep going with my plus 6 pattern. 118 plus 6. That should give me 124. Okay, so now that I've completed my pattern with my plus 6, or my adding 6 to each step, let's go to the next one. Alright, here's our next set of numbers, and as you can see, first of all, the pattern's decreasing this time. My numbers are getting smaller, and this time I only have to find 2. Alright, so in just a second, I'm going to pause the video for you to work on figuring it out, and then I want you to see if you got the same thing I did. Okay, so 96, 79, 62, 45. Remember, we can either, if we're decreasing, the 2 operations I need to focus on are either subtraction or division. Let's see how you do. Okay, so what I've done here after I paused the video, now I went in and I've written down some of the things that have happened in this problem, so that should help you to solve the final 2 numbers. So since we're subtracting by 17 each time, I'm going to pause the video. I want you to see if you can figure out the next 2 missing numbers. Alright, welcome back. If you got 28 and 11 in those missing blanks, you got it. You got it correct. Good job. If you didn't, go back and see where you might have made a mistake. Maybe it was when you were subtracting. If you wrote down 45 minus 17, well, maybe ask yourself, did you have a regrouping error? Because when you had to borrow from the tens place value spot to make this a 15 so that you could subtract efficiently, maybe you made a mistake there. So check your work and see where you might have made a mistake. Let's go on to our next problem. Okay, now if you look at this problem, we see that our numbers are decreasing again, but you can also see that we have some blanks in some different spots. They aren't all at the end. We have a number here found in the middle here. He's kind of sitting there alone. So since we're decreasing, you should automatically tell yourself, okay, I know since we're decreasing, it is either subtracting or dividing. All right? Usually, we know we're going to start with the easy one first and see if that solves our problem with subtraction. Okay? So 98, 87, 76. Then that's going to get me to something, but as you're figuring out this problem, don't just assume. Make sure that it gets you to 54 on that next number. Okay, I'm going to pause the video to allow you some time to figure out to see how these numbers are decreasing. Good luck. Okay, so I went ahead and looked at the pattern for the numbers. So I know that 98, and if I subtract 11, I get 87. If I take 87 and I subtract 11, I get 76. And if I take 76 and I subtract 11, what should that get me? If you are thinking 65, you are correct. If you have 65 and you subtract 11, yep, that gets me to 54. So I know I'm good here. So that means that, yep, my problem has the rule of subtract 11. So now I'm going to keep going and finish out these last two. 54 minus 11 should get me to, if you said 43, you're correct. And now I'm going to subtract 11 again. 43 minus 11, that should get me to 32. If you said 32, you are correct. Good job. Okay. On this last problem here, we're starting with some big numbers, but don't, just because you see a large number, don't just automatically shut down. We have to see how this might work out. All right, so let's look at our numbers. Rule 1, or question 1, we have to ask ourselves, is the pattern increasing or decreasing, guys? Everybody right now, you should be saying decreasing. So since it's decreasing, what operations do I focus in on? You got it. Subtraction or division. Okay, so let's ask ourselves, how do I get from 400 to 200? Well, I can subtract 200. There's my subtract 200. If I take 200 and I subtract 200, do I get 100? Subtract 200, does that work? 200 minus 200, do I get 100 here? Nope, that does not work, does it? So we're going to get rid of that. 200 does not work. So I know for sure it's not subtraction, so it's got to be division. Uh-oh, how do I divide such a large number? 400 divided by what gives me 200? Okay, well, let's think through this. 400 and 200. I know if I take 400 and I split it in half, I get 200 each. So when I split things in half, that means the same thing as what, guys? Divide by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 here, and let's see if it continues working. 400 divided by 2 equals 200. If I take 200 and I split it in half, or I divide it by 2, do I get 100? I sure do. If I take 100 and I divide it by 2, my rule still stays. If I take 100 and I divide it in half, I get 50 each. So now, since my rule I know is divide by 2, now I need to keep going. 50 divided by 2, what do I get? It's like 50 cents. The two coins that equal 50 cents are a nickel a piece, right? 25. 50 divided by 2 is 25. 25 divided by 2. Uh-oh. 25 is an odd number. If I divide that in 2, now I need to start thinking about my decimals. 25 divided by 2, if I split that in half, it's not going to end up being even, is it? So I have to ask myself, what's going to get me, what's a number close by I can divide by half? 24 divided in half is 12. And then a half plus another half, 12.5. We know another way to write 12.5. It's 12 and a half. That would work too. So my last number is 12.5. That's kind of a little bit of a tricky one there at the end to see who might have gotten that one. Okay, if you got 12.5, awesome job. If you didn't, it's not a big deal. Okay. What we're going to do next, we're going to do some practice tomorrow in class with number patterns, and we're going to be practicing these 2 rules with number patterns. We'll have a little bit of a pre-test to see how you did and move on from there. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you tomorrow.